We like to believe that we are the architects of our own minds. We assume that if a system tried to strip away our free will, we would notice. We would fight back. We would see the bars of the cage. But human psychology has a terrifying, hidden flaw. In the 1930s, one of the most highly educated, culturally advanced nations on Earth didn't just surrender their critical thinking. They stood in long lines and happily paid for the exact device that erased it. It wasn't a military weapon. It wasn't an armed secret police force. It was a simple, elegant, wooden box that cost the equivalent of just $5. Within a few short years, this cheap piece of living room furniture mathematically programmed 80 million people to walk blindly into the darkest abyss of the 20th century. This is the anatomy of the ultimate Trojan horse. To understand how a mind is completely broken, you first have to understand how it is seduced. In August 1933, at the Berlin radio show, the new government unveiled a masterpiece of social engineering. They called it the Volksempfänger, the People's Receiver, model VE301. At the time, a radio was an absolute luxury. A standard model cost around 400 Reichsmarks. It was a status symbol, reserved strictly for the wealthy elite. But the regime understood a fundamental law of human nature. If you want to control the masses, you first have to give them something they want. The VE301 was not disguised as a weapon. It was an aesthetic marvel, made from bakelite, a brand new, highly polished, cutting-edge plastic. It featured a sleek, minimalist Art Deco design. It didn't look like oppression. It looked like the future, and the trap was the price. Through massive government subsidies, this piece of luxury was priced at just 76 Reichsmarks. Later models dropped to a staggering 35 marks. They even offered easy installment plans, making it irresistible. This is where the psychological blind spot, the normalcy bias, takes over. When a working-class father bought this radio, he didn't think he was bringing a propaganda machine into his home. He thought he was buying progress. He thought he was providing his family with modern entertainment, music, and culture. It felt like a gift from a caring system, and that is exactly what made it so incredibly dangerous. Now that the Trojan horse was securely inside the living room, the real psychological warfare began. You might assume that the regime used this radio to broadcast endless, screaming political speeches, that they flooded the airwaves with pure hatred 24 hours a day. But Joseph Goebbels, the minister of propaganda, was a master of human psychology. He knew that if you only broadcast political dogma, people will simply turn the radio off. His strategy was far more insidious. He weaponized entertainment. Goebbels ordered that the vast majority of radio broadcasts be filled with light music, comedy sketches, and family dramas. He gave an exhausted, working-class population exactly what they craved: an escape. This is the absolute darkest application of what psychologists call the halo effect. The halo effect is a cognitive bias where finding one positive trait in something completely blinds you to its underlying darkness. Because the radio brought beautiful Beethoven symphonies into their homes, the people associated the box with comfort. Because it made them laugh, they associated it with joy. And because the government provided it, they associated the regime with generosity. They didn't sell the ideology directly. They wrapped the poison in the honey of premium entertainment. Once the listener's psychological defenses were completely lowered, the system went to work. A 5-minute, heavily edited news bulletin here. A subtle, dehumanizing joke about a minority group there. A majestic speech about national pride, seamlessly inserted between two beautiful pieces of classical music. It wasn't a flood of propaganda. It was a slow, invisible IV drip. And the tragic reality of human nature is this: when you are being entertained, you don't realize that your mind is being completely rewritten. By 1939, over 70% of German households owned one of these radios. It was the highest rate of radio ownership anywhere in the world. But as the nation was being quietly maneuvered toward total war, the true, terrifying nature of the VE301 was finally revealed. The sinister genius of this machine was not in what it could do. It was in what it couldn't. Standard luxury radios of that era came equipped with a shortwave band, allowing listeners to tune into international broadcasts like the BBC World Service. But the Volksempfänger was intentionally crippled. It was engineered to only receive local and national medium wave frequencies. This wasn't a manufacturing defect to save money. It was an invisible electronic prison with just a few soldered wires. 80 million people were suddenly and completely cut off from the rest of the world. When you sever a population from outside information, you create an absolute echo chamber, and this triggers one of the most dangerous glitches in the human brain: the Illusory Truth Effect. Psychology dictates that if you hear a lie once, your critical thinking kicks in. You question it. But if you hear that exact same lie every single day, from the only source of information you have left, your brain simply stops fighting. The mind, exhausted from trying to decipher reality, accepts the engineered narrative as absolute truth. It is a biological survival mechanism, perfectly weaponized by the state. The regime didn't need to win debates. It didn't need to present logical arguments to a highly educated populace. It just needed a monopoly on their reality, because when a single frequency is the only thing you can hear, it eventually becomes the only thing you can think. The tragedy of the 1930s is not that it belongs to the past. It is that it was merely a prototype. When we look back at that era, we feel a false sense of superiority. We tell ourselves that we are too smart, too connected, and too aware to ever be manipulated so easily. But the architecture of the human mind hasn't changed in a century. We are still biologically wired to seek comfort over truth. We still fall victim to the halo effect, happily trading our critical thinking for premium, infinite entertainment. And we still willingly isolate ourselves in digital echo chambers that validate our deepest, most dangerous biases. The only difference is the hardware. In 1933, an entire educated nation voluntarily lined up to buy a wooden box that controlled what they heard. Today, we stand in long lines paying thousands of dollars for glowing glass screens that control what we see. They don't need to solder the wires or lock the frequencies anymore. The algorithm does it for them. If the system built a cage around your mind today, would you fight it? Or would you just keep scrolling? Let me know your thoughts down below.